Okay, so let's start building this chassis. So the frame, let's start with the frame. So the frame, the front, you'll see that this is the front, okay? And then these two tabs here indicate the rear. So, and the hollow channel goes on the inside. So having both of these together is going to look something like this, okay? So in putting this together, let's start with one side. So this guy here will get screwed onto the back. I'm going to hold it on the side here real quick. I'm using, these are supposed to be 3mm by 6mm screws. I'm using an 8mm length screw here, only because I don't have any 6mm. Screws with this kind of head, so it's not really going to matter, but just wanted you to know what the manual says. So we're just going to put one side in, and this side here, there's a hole on the top right here that should line up, okay? And there is no nut on the side here, the screw that I'm putting in, because it's threaded on the side of the channel. Now, if you happen to have stripped your thread on the side channel, then you can put a nut in here, but it's not necessary. Now, a nut does go, so the top is not, this part here is not threaded, so there will be a nut that comes at the bottom. The only reason that this might look like it's threaded as I'm pushing this through is only because this was powder coated, and it would have filled in a little bit of the hole that's there, not giving it full clearance. I don't need a different screwdriver than this, I think. There we go. Okay. So on the bottom here, the manual has you put in a regular nut and using Loctite, but we're using lock nuts here, nylon lock nuts, so I don't really need to have thread lock on this. So basically start getting that screwed in there. Okay, so we're starting with that one side, and I let this a little bit loose only because I wanted to make sure that I was able to get this piece in here first. Maybe I should have done that first, but it doesn't really matter. So now I can tighten that. Okay, so now let's do the next one. Basically the same. Let's test our theory here and see if it's easier for me to put the screw in here first. So this one I'm going to put a screw facing towards the back, and the reason I don't put both screws in here is because there's something that'll get screwed onto there a little bit later. So okay, so we have these. I'm going to go ahead and start looking at putting the other side in place. These are a little bit tight, like I said, because they were powder coated. Should probably have 2 screwdrivers here instead of going back and forth with that one. Again, all of these screws are 3mm screws by 6mm in length. Okay, I'll leave that in for now. Put the bolt in a second here. Let me get this one. I'll do the same as I did on the other side with the screw on the side here. You want to be careful not to cross thread, so it starts going in too tight. It's because you're cross threading it. So okay, so there's that one. Okay, so that's the rear section. Now this middle section here is going to need the little rubber spacers put in. This is what's going to hold the transmission in place. So you want to pop these rubber spacers. You can see that there. And these little holes here should slide right in. Pretty simple. Okay. And then this guy here, just line up the holes on each side there. Okay, so now that the holes are lined up, we'll want to put a screw in. Again, these are threaded on the sides, just like the other ones. So we're going to put 4 screws, 2 on each side. Okay, so there's that. And then we have the front plate. Now the front plate, these 2 little notches here go towards the back, because this is going to end up being this this plate that holds the motor is going to go here. So this goes towards the back. Line up the holes there. Okay, again, this is a little tight because of the powder coating. There we go. Okay. And then there's these 2 screws that'll go in here. This goes there. Yeah, the powder coating is keeping this. There we go. From sliding in really easy. All right. So there you go. So now we got the chassis in play. Okay. So let's see what's next here. I think what we're going to do is if I'm not mistaken, the steering would have come next. So what we're going to need is this piece here, this nylon piece here. I had painted it silver, you know, so we're going to need a bushing for that, for sure. And then I'm going to need a screw, and I think that screw is supposed to be 15 millimeters or something like that. There's not that many screws here. 12 is going to be too short. We got 16 millimeters. That should work. The choices we have are 6, 10, 12, and 16. So I'm using just standard deduction that the other screws would be too small to fit in here. So basically we're going to take this piece. It's going to go like this, and this is going to, we need to have this little bushing here in place, and that's going to go right in here like this. And the screw's going to go through. So it's a 3 millimeter by, in my case, it's 16. It really should be 15. We need a little lock nut there. You know, I wonder if I have a 12. A 12 might be better. This is still kind of way too long, so let's do a 12 millimeter. Let's see how this works instead. Yeah. It'll probably be a little bit better, I think. Just not going to expose as much of the bolt, but that's okay because we're using a lock nut. So the main thing here is that this is going to get bolted onto the side, and so this has to be able to turn because this is your steering mechanism. So, and I think that we're good to go there. Yeah. That little bushing is going to give you a little bit of spacing between the top and the bottom and this thing, so this thing can freely, this has to slide, I mean this has to spin freely on this. So okay, you also have to be careful. So this side here is longer than this side here is longer than this side here. On this side, on the shorter side, your little ball connector needs to face up here, and then on this side the ball connector needs to face down. Okay, so it looks like this. Okay, so we'll put that aside for now. We're also going to need these these little shock holders. There's 4 of them. There's 4 shocks, right? So each one of these is going to need a little rubber grommet on it. Should have one more somewhere. Okay, so you might as well put these little rubber grommets on these things now while you have them out. So you can't tell this, you may not be able to tell this is black, but the little rubber grommet goes all the way through, so there'll be some exposed on the other side. Okay, so let's do that real quick here for all of these. So now we got those guys in place. Let's put all this stuff together now. Okay, so now that we have the chassis done, I think we're gonna need around 12 screws. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, actually 14. But what I just noticed is there's supposed to be these bumper stays in the back here, and I don't see them. I have spares, but this is what they're supposed to look like. This is for the rear bumper. I must have misplaced the powder coated ones, and I ended up having to paint these blue or black here, but these would go on the back. The only purpose these serve is to hold the rear bumper. So we'll get to that later. In the meantime, we can at least start putting these shock mounts and all these other pieces in. So these go mounted on the sides like so. So here there's one screw that's threaded and there's one that goes through, so we'll need a bolt for that one. So let's put the threaded one on first because that'll hold this in place. And these again 3mm by 6mm in length, even though I'm using 8. So we'll just leave that a little bit loose for now. Put one more bolt in here. This middle one isn't screwed, it's just that, again, the powder coating covered up a little bit of the hole. But now that it's in the middle, we can tighten this one up. And we can put the bolt in place over there. Guy's going to be a tight fit because there's this other bolt in play there. Okay, so this is what this is going to look like. Okay, this is in the middle. Oops, sorry, this right here is in the middle and it has a bolt on the other side. This is on the far left here and it goes onto this bracket that's already threaded. So that's what it's going to look like when you're done with it. Okay. helps if I put it in the camera. So that's what it's going to look like when you're done with it. Threaded bolt, the bolt and the nut behind it. Okay. So let's do the other side the same way here. Okay. All right. The two front ones will be a lot easier. I promise you that. Because we don't have to thread that little bolt through there. So the front ones, there's all these holes in the front. Okay. These front ones go on the very front two holes here. And they're already should be cleared up to go. They're not threaded, so you're going to have to put a nut on the back of each of these. Again, I'm only screwing them in a little bit only because of the powder coating that's plugging up a little bit of the hole. But there will be a nut behind them. And again, I'm using lock nuts, so you don't need to have thread lock. If you're using the regular nuts, you're going to need thread lock. And what you do is you first screw the thing in with the nut in place, and then apply the thread lock. Don't tighten it all the way, but just kind of screw it in a bit and put the thread lock on the end of the bolt, and then tighten it. That's how you ensure that it doesn't come loose. All right, so there's that one. Now we got the other side. Okay, so there we go. Got all the shock towers in place. So now what we're going to do is need to put the steering in here. So for this guy, you're going to need one of these. I painted mine silver, but you're going to need one of these short nylon spacers. Okay, so the short nylon spacer is basically going to push this out of the spacer is there to take up the space inside the channel, so it pushes this out. So what we're going to need for this is two 12mm screws for that. Okay, and we're going to need two nuts for that as well. So this is going to go like this. No, this is the wrong spacer. Yeah, there it is. This is the shortest width spacer. You'll know because the screw's not going to be able to fit if you use the wrong spacer. Okay. So now we got these two guys in. There's two holes there. These will slide through, and then these nuts get tightened on the other side. I'm only tightening the bolts only so far, and I'll tighten the rest with the Allen wrench on the other side, because if I tighten and keep turning these bolts, once they hit the powder coating, it might scratch up the powder coating. So don't want to turn the bolt on once it's touching the powder coating. All right, this looks like it's already kind of tight. Yeah. Okay. So there we go. Got the steering in place. Got the shock towers in place. So I think the next thing we're going to do is the leaf springs. Okay, so let's start with the front. We're going to need some shackles. It's going to be one for each side. We're also going to need, there's going to be some on the front. It's going to be one of these on each side, I think, if I'm not mistaken. We need spacers for these. So again, these are painted silver, but yours would probably be nylon. And then those are for the shackles here, and then these two would be for the front, I think. So for those shackles, we're also going to need these little guys, these little bushings, and we'll use 14mm screws. We'll need nuts for those screws. Okay, so this is how this is going to work. So for the front shackles, this piece right here goes towards the front. Okay. This is your spacer for it. The spacer is the same on both sides, so it's irrelevant how it's put in, but you're going to need to put this little bushing there, because the shackle has to twist a little bit. Okay, so put that in. This goes towards the front. I'm going to tighten this first because I need to pull this spacer into the channel some more. See how it's protruding out of the channel? That's because of the powder coating. So I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. Give you a smaller screw here. So now that we've done that, we can put this shackle in. Bend these out just a tiny bit, not too much. There we go. The screw should just float all the way through, which it does. And then we'll put a lock nut on the other side and tighten it up. That bushing that goes through will keep it spaced away from the chassis so it can move freely. Okay. So we'll do the same for the other side. I spread it out just a little bit so it can fit easily over the channel, but when you tighten it down, it'll bring it back in again. So okay, all right. So there's those two. Now for the front here, we're going to need to put these guys in. So these spacers that fit in the channel, the little ridges that shoot out, see one side's flat and one side's not. The little ridges that shoot out go towards the inside of the channel, okay? Kind of hard to do this on camera because usually I have this on my lap. But I just realized something too. So let me put these in first and I'll tell you what I just realized that I just did wrong. Hopefully you learn from my mistakes. Okay. So with these guys, what will typically happen is you'll have one washer. Let me get a washer here. I'll need both of these. And that's usually the screw in the front that requires a washer. This thing going all the way through here. These are not threaded, by the way, so you're going to need a nut on the other side. And I'm using 14 millimeter long. I'm using 3 millimeter screws, 14 millimeters long. I believe, because of the Allen heads that I'm using, I don't have 15, but 15 would be kind of long anyways. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's what the Tamiya manual calls for, is the 15 millimeter in length screws. because I don't think they use 14mm screws anywhere. So I'm going to do the same for the other side, but before I do, let me tell you what I did wrong. So I was holding this chassis like this when I was putting in these shackles, but they need to go up this on this side. So you need to hold the chassis upside down when you're putting the shackles in. So I kind of screwed that up royally. So we're just going to change sides here. These are in reverse order. Okay. Again, hope you learn from my mistakes. All right, do the same for the other side. Realize that when I put in these front pieces, what I did wrong. Okay. Yeah. that's the way it's supposed to look. So let me put the other side in here now. Same, the little ridges go on the inside. Typically what happens when you powder coat, you plug up the holes, or you ream them out afterwards. But I didn't do either when this was powder coated, so now I'm paying the price. Wow. Okay. So that is what this is supposed to look like. Okay. Supposed to be the bottom, the shackles need to be facing up. Okay. So that is the front. Now let's do the back. Now the rear is very similar to the front. We're going to need, let me see, 2 of these. And we're going to need 2 shackles. So we're going to need 2, 4, 6, 8 screws. And we're going to need spacers. Okay, so let's not make the same mistake we made with the front. This has to be upside down. So the towers need to be facing down, okay? So in this case, these two holes in the back here are for the bumper stays that which we don't have put on. So what's going to happen in the back is the shackles, the straight shackles are going to go here. So it's going to face, this part's going to face the front. Okay, just like the other ones, were. So we're gonna need the spacers for these guys as well. But unlike the front, these guys will use these two little pieces here. So what'll happen is the shackles, these shackles here are going to go and get mounted onto this piece here. So we're going to need a spacer for here. That's going to go in there. Okay, I don't know if you saw what I did. So there's a spacer that goes in there like so. Put these screws down. This is going to come over those spacers, and then you're going to put a screw in like this and a bolt on the other side. I'll show you what this looks like once I tighten this down. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Bolt, nut, and there's a spacer in the middle, and that's what lets this spring freely. Okay, and you're going to do the exact same thing except just the opposite for the other side. So since we have this side done already, we're going to do the exact same thing for the other side. The only difference is that the nut is going to come in this way. Okay, so we'll put the spacer. Okay, again, swings freely, needs to swing freely. All right, so now you have these two opposites. So now these guys here, these small ones are the same on both sides, so you don't have to worry about how they go in. But they go in like so. Let's spread out this. You see, that's not spread out real well. I want to make sure I spread these out because I don't want to scratch the powder coating when I'm sliding these in. We can always, they'll tighten back into shape. Find out why this isn't lining itself up very well. Let's try this again. Make sure the spacer's in the right place. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. So there you go. Maybe tighten that up just a tiny bit here, but that's how that goes. So now we'll do the same for the other side. Okay, it's just the opposite. Okay, so there you go. Got those shackles and everything in place. So the only ones that we have left now are just these two guys. Again, upside down. Make sure that the little ridges are facing inside. These guys will face that way like this. Okay, do the same thing for the other side. Again, the little ridges go inside. Okay, so we're done with that. Let's see what's next.